Hey guys, welcome back. In today's video, we're going to be talking about late October hunting strategies or hunting the pre-rut. Every area, the start of the pre-rut is going to be a little bit different. Those northern locations are going to start a little bit earlier, and then those southern locations are going to start a little bit later. But the pre-rut should be kicking off around the same time every single season, and for us, it's right around October 24. And this is such an exciting time to be in the woods. I really don't know what time of year I prefer hunting more, the pre-rut or the rut. I would say half of our bucks go down in the pre-rut and half of our bucks go down in the rut. So it's really a toss-up, but the one nice thing about the pre-rut is that the movement is still fairly predictable. So in this video, we're gonna be talking about a couple things. First, we'll kind of talk about where you should be hunting and some of the things that you should be keying in on during the pre-rut. And then lastly, we'll kind of go over some things you should be watching weather-wise to make sure that you guys have better opportunities at your target deer. So hopefully up until this point, you've been able to keep your property relatively pressure-free. If you haven't seen it, we did an early October hunting strategies video and I will link it above. But just to kind of give you the cliff notes here, we do more observational sits in the early season. We're sitting closer to the house, closer to the pole barn, right off of roads. We are absolutely still hunting, but we are not pushing into our higher odds pre-rut and rut stands until about the 24th of October. And there's really two reasons for that. The first being that those older bucks generally don't start moving consistently during daylight until about the 20th to the 24th of October. And I'm not saying that you can't go in and kill that deer on the 10th of October. You could absolutely do that, but your percentages are a lot lower going in early as opposed to the pre-rut when he's going to be on his feet on a more regular basis. And the second reason why we're not really pushing into our pre-rut or rut stands in the early season is because no matter how good your scent control routine is, you're still going to be leaving some sort of a scent signature on your way to your stand, on stand, and as you exit the stand. But if deer happen to get downwind of you or they happen to cut your tracks, they're going to know something's up and they're going to be more on edge. Now those doe family groups, they're probably going to keep moving right to that food source. But if that older buck, the one that you're after, happens to notice that you were there, he could change his patterns altogether. And for us, it's just not worth risking that on a lower odds early season hunt as opposed to going in during a higher odds pre-rut sit. So again, hopefully you've been able to keep your property pressure free up until this point, but now that it's the pre-rut, we like to start getting a little bit more aggressive with our hunting tactics. And this is just such a fun time to be in the woods. The deer are a lot more active, and as long as the property has remained unpressured up until this point, those bucks are going to be laying down a lot of sign. And that is one thing I kind of wanted to talk about, is how to read that sign and hopefully turn that into an encounter with your target buck. So first, let's talk about the rubs that you're going to start seeing on the way to and from your stand. Now, I don't hunt over rubs, but they can give you a pretty good idea on the trail that buck's taking from his bedding area to that food source in the afternoon. And how you can figure this out is if you're walking by one of your deer trails and you see several rubs on the same side of the trail, then that is most likely the direction that that deer is taking. So if you know that he's bedding over here and feeding over here, and you're looking down the trail and those rubs are staring at you in the face, that is most likely the trail that he's taking from his bedding area to his food source in the afternoon. So that's the afternoon trail. And it's the complete opposite for the morning. If you happen to notice on one of your trails that those rubs are on the opposite side of the tree, so you got your food source over here, your bedding area over here, if those rubs are staring at you in the face and the bedding location is that way, then that is most likely his morning route. So again, I wouldn't recommend hunting over the rubs. The chances that he's going to rub those same trees over and over again is pretty low, but the chances that he's going to be taking those same trails over and over again during those times of day is pretty high. There's a reason he's taking those trails at that time of day, and it's because he feels very secure. So definitely start paying attention to the rub sign this time of year. The next thing that you're going to see start popping up all over the place are scrapes. And this is something that I pay very close attention to, especially those primary perennial scrapes. And guys, there is a difference between a primary scrape or perennial scrape and these random satellite scrapes. And unfortunately, if you guys just got this piece of property or you don't have any history with it, sometimes it takes a few years to figure out which ones are the perennial scrapes. But most of the time, these primary scrapes are going to be in cover, close to doe bedding locations, close to food sources. They're not going to have any leaves in them. They're going to be bare to the ground. And these are the scrapes that I really pay attention to. You are going to see random scrapes start popping up on your way to the stand. Those are the more random satellite scrapes. Do not pay any attention to those. Those were just made randomly, and the chances that a buck is going to return to that is very low. Again, bucks are laying down a ton of sign during the pre-rut, and you shouldn't treat it all the same. We have no idea why that random scrape showed up. There could have been a buck moving through, and another buck was there. He got really mad. He made a huge rub. He made a big scrape just to kind of show off a little bit to intimidate that other buck. and say, this is my area, get out of here. And then you see that scrape, you get really excited about it, you hang your stand and you sit there all day and you don't see anything. Well, it's because that deer was randomly walking through there and there happened to be another deer there. If that other buck hadn't been there, that buck probably wouldn't have made that scrape right there. So if you see something randomly pop up, don't pay a lot of attention to it. Try to find that historical sign, you know, that rub line that's there every single season, or those primary perennial scrapes that those deer are hitting all year round. And once you have a pretty good idea where those primary or perennial scrapes are located, that's where you want to be setting up. And that's where we spend most of our time during the pre-rut. And there's going to be several of these around your property, so you should be able to hunt them with different wind directions. And as far as hunting strategy goes, as to where we're spending most of our time during the pre-rut, in the mornings, we're hunting on the downwind edge of these doe bedding areas. And then in the evenings or the afternoon hunt, we're switching to the downwind side of the afternoon food source. And every single one of the stand sites that we're sitting on has a primary scrape within 25 to 30 yards of the stand. And I'll kind of talk about why we're choosing these locations during that time of day. Up until this point, we've seen a lot of the younger bucks scooting does around, the younger bucks are sparring, but during the pre-rut, those bucks know that the rut is right around the corner and they're going to start keeping tabs on all those does on your property. They want to know who's close to estrus and who's not. They're extremely efficient, and one way they do that is by constantly checking on those does. And where are those does in the morning? Those does are back in the bedding locations. And what those bucks are going to do, knowing that those does are in there, they're going to swing on the downwind side of that bedding area, scent checking it. Okay, they don't have to run through that bedding area to check all the does. All they need to do is swing on the downwind side, and they can check every doe in there to see if she's close to estrus or if she's not. And it's the exact same thought process in the afternoon. Those does are going to be making their way to the afternoon feeding location, and those bucks are going to be swinging on the downwind side of it. They don't have to risk exposing themselves out in the middle of that field. They can check every single doe by taking the trail on the downwind side of the food plot. And if you have a pretty good idea of what he's going to do, then you need to set up accordingly. And that's kind of our approach to hunting. So in the mornings, again, we're setting up on the downwind side of that doe bedding area, hopefully with his trail in between us and that doe bedding location so he doesn't ever catch our wind. And the same thing in the afternoon. We are hunting downwind of the afternoon food source with his trail in between us and that food source. And we're always hunting over a primary perennial scrape. And if there isn't a primary scrape on his trail, then make one. Now, if this is a brand new property for you and there is not a perennial scrape on his trail, do not make one on October 20. He's going to take that trail like he always does, and he's going to see that mock scrape, and he is not going to like it. He's going to know something is different. You probably left scent behind. I'm just telling you, the risk of putting in a mock scrape right before the pre-rut is too high. I just wouldn't do it. Set those things up in May, set them up in June, let those deer get used to them for a couple months. So when it is time to start hunting the pre-rut, those deer are conditioned to check that scrape, to hit that scrape. So you're hunting downwind of that bedding area in the morning, you're hunting downwind of that food source in the afternoon, but there's one thing that can put a premium on those spots, and that's natural funnels or natural pinch points. If you have a location where there's a bedding area relatively close to another bedding area, and there's a narrow strip of cover connecting the two, where that pinches down is a great spot to set up. Set up on the downwind side of that. And a lot of times what those older bucks will do is they'll be just inside the cover. So they don't want to expose themselves. So they're going to follow that downwind edge. And as that cover pinches down, they don't want to cut across that open field, or they don't want to cut across that open woodlot. They're going to stay in that cover. And knowing that, you can set up relatively close to that pinch point or that natural funnel just to give yourself a lot better of an opportunity. It doesn't really have to be two bedding areas. It could be a bedding area in an open field, a bedding area in a pond. It's really just a spot that those older bucks don't want to be because they don't feel safe, and it consolidates their movement into a smaller space. So that's kind of the why behind the where we're hunting and when we're hunting those locations. And now let's switch gears and talk more about weather and some of the things that you should be watching out for to say, man, I really need to get in the woods right now. The first thing that you want to be watching out for, and we've talked about this in a lot of other videos, is cold fronts. If you have above average temperatures for this time of year, and then that cold front moves through, the temperature drops, that barometric pressure rises, that's the time you want to be in the woods. During that front, those deer are going to be hunkered down. They're not going to really be moving much. And as soon as that front goes through, they're going to be up on their feet. And the colder the temperature, the better. This is when those bucks really start moving a lot more. And it's really not comfortable to be moving around in 70, 80 degrees. But if it's like 45 degrees, 30 degrees, 20 degrees, you're going to see a lot more movement from those older bucks during daylight. And one thing I will say, even if a cold front hasn't gone through, but it's cold, get in the woods. It's a lot more comfortable for these deer to be moving around during daylight in the colder temperatures. And they're going to be moving a lot during the pre-rut. We do most of our wading in the early season, but now that it's the pre-rut, if it's cold, we're going in. If it happens to be warm one day and the next day is going to be a lot colder, we will hang back and then hunt that next day. But if it's consistently cold, we're going to be in the woods and we're going to be consistently hunting those pre-rut stand locations. And the final thing that you guys should be looking out for along with cold weather is rain. Because you're hunting scrapes, precipitation can be a great indicator as to when you should be in your stand. And that's immediately following the storm, the sprinkle, any type of rain event. And the reason behind it is simple. Rain washes scent away. If I want to check a camera on my property that I don't really have a lot of opportunities to check, I'm going to wait to check that camera for some sort of a storm. Because I know that during that storm, those deer are most likely bedded down, and because I know that when I leave, that rain is going to wash away a majority of my scent. And when it comes to scent and scrapes, it's the same thing. That rain is going to wash away a lot of the scent that buck left there, and he knows it. So as soon as the rain is done, there's a really good chance that he's going to come back up and freshen that scrape. He wants to let all the other bucks know that that's his area, that's his scrape, and if the rain washed his scent away, you can bet within a few hours he's going to be back there freshening that thing up. So guys, hopefully these tips and strategies on hunting the pre-rut make sense. I do know that everyone has a different approach to hunting, and what we do might not be the same as what you do. If you guys do anything different, I'd love to hear about it. And if you do have questions about how to hunt the pre-rut, I'd love to hear those too. Please drop your comments and questions in the comment section below. I'll get back to those as soon as I can, and we will see you guys in the next video.